Hey guys, this is Cast for Closers, your podcast for dominating inside sales and hitting your quota. For those of you who are listening to us for the first time and don't know, this podcast is made by MeTime, an inside sales software. We help your sales reps to be more productive and schedule more meetings. If you are curious enough and want to know more, please visit metime.com.br and test our free trial. On this episode, we are talking exactly about sales productivity. And to clarify and maybe solve some of our problems, we call Jill Konrath. Jill is a best-selling author. She wrote Agile Selling, Snap Selling, and her most recent book is called More Sales, Less Time. And she is also one of the most respected minds in our sales world. Jill, welcome to our show. It's an honor to have you here and spend some time with you. Please take a moment to introduce yourself and say hello to our audience.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for the nice introduction. I am somebody who has been in sales for pretty much my entire career. I love the field of sales. I feel like it's constantly changing, and there's more and more things to learn all the time.
Yes.
And so for me, that's the most fun part of sales, is that it's a constant challenge and it's never the same.
Yeah, and also learning and evolving. Jill, I know you're a fierce supporter of sales training, of this learning and evolving and studying our own craft. And I also hear a lot from your own talks and videos how learning can save us time and bring more results. And as I hear a lot here in Brazil, Diego, we don't have that much time left for training. I would like you to walk us through your logic of how sales learning can help a salesperson to be more productive.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. I mean, how can you be more productive? How can you get more done in a day? How can you accomplish your goals with less effort? You know, if you bring all those questions together, that's what's on my mind all the time. And I see a number of organizations. It's not just in Brazil, and it's not just in sales, inside sales. It is a worldwide epidemic of people that say we just don't have time. We have to get our people on the phones making calls. But to me, the thing that I see that happens in the rush to get people to perform is that companies fail to get them to perform the right things. and they just get them out there making calls, saying, well, that's what we have to do. They have to get on the phones. But the reality of it is that, first of all, the biggest mistake I see is that people train new hires on what it is that they're selling. Like, here's our product, here's our technology, here's our services, and it's all about us, and here's, how you order it, and here's what you say about it, and here's the brochures, and here's all this. All that makes no sense as a seller unless you understand the buyer.
Yeah. And
so the first thing I think that people absolutely need to be trained on is, who is this human being that we're calling? What is their job? What are their roles and responsibilities besides things just related to what we sell? What are the issues and challenges that they're facing on a regular basis? What are their goals this year? How are they evaluated? How is their performance evaluated? These are the kinds of things that your buyer thinks about all day. And if we don't understand the context in which they are working, we can never have an intelligent conversation with them. We can only keep trying to sell them something. And the minute somebody feels like they're being sold, they put up a barrier and they say, whoa, slow down. We're not interested. We're already working with another vendor. Or how much does yours cost? Oh, that's way too much. So that's the kind of response we get if we, go after prospects and call them or send emails to them. And it's really focused on us getting the business. But if we change the game, we can have totally different conversations.
For sure. I remember some of the episodes we recorded some time ago, and an interesting exercise for our audience. Think like your customers as he or she wakes up, put both feet on the ground, and then what? what does or he or she do every day long? What are her worries? What are her goals and challenges you were mentioning, right? And this is a very, very tempting thing to ignore, because I think our salespeople are so trained on the product itself. It's like their comfort zone, and it's always tempting and comforting to pull the conversation for the product and not question, not confronting realities. And so do you see this also?
I see that absolutely all the time. It's what people are trained on. It's what they're told to talk about. And if you take a look at what happens when that's what people are trained to do, it automatically leads to objections and problems. Yeah. Let me give you an example. There was a period of time a few years back when, personally, two of my biggest clients, who I'd worked with for over a decade each, went through financial troubles, and they laid off all outside consultants, and 95% of my business was wiped out within a 3-month period.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to start all over again. and I started to contact companies that were perfect targets for my services, and B, in my area that I could easily serve them. And nobody returned my calls or responded to my emails. And I thought, wow, what a bunch of jerks. They don't ever call me back. They don't respond. And I'm sending all these emails and trying to do things. And I remember one time very vividly, I was had focused on a technology company in the Minneapolis area where I live, and studied them. I'd done research on the company, and I crafted what I thought was the perfect phone call. I was going to leave this message, and I really spent a lot of time crafting a good message. And I thought to myself, I'll just call and leave myself that message first, just to make sure. So I called, left myself the message, and called myself back. And first of all, I was appalled at how I sounded. So I had to call myself back and just listen again, because I hated my own voice. Second thing I noticed is that my message was a minute long. Do you know how long a minute is when you're on the phone?
If we try to be silent for 1 minute here, it would be like an eternity.
Yes. And listening to somebody leave a message that's a minute long is an eternity also.
Yes.
So I called myself back because I really liked my words. It was all about my company, and how I could help them and the kind of people I'd helped before, blah, blah, blah.
For sure.
And I called myself back, and this time I talked faster because I really liked every word that I'd written down from my message. So I was able to get my message out in 45 seconds, but I couldn't even understand what I was saying because I was talking so fast. And so then I realized something had to go, and I recognized that my attention span was 15 to 20 seconds. That's all I wanted to listen to for a voicemail message. And so then if it's only 15 to 20 seconds, what do you have to cut out in order to get somebody to pay attention? And I started crossing off words, and I crossed off whole sentences, and I crossed off more. And it's like, oh my God. But I really got down to something that was effective, but it took me listening as if I were my customer.
Wow. Such an interesting exercise.
Yeah. It was fascinating to realize that you would delete yourself is rather humbling. You know what I mean?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes. And the same thing with email. What I discovered with emails, I was sending out emails is, number one, a lot of people were looking on their cell phones, not on their screens. And I had paragraphs that were 4 sentences long, and 4 sentences long on a cell phone. It's like you're scrolling.
Yes.
You have to chop to get down to like 60 or 90 words, because that's about all somebody's willing to invest in you. And so that means every word you say can either make or break the conversation. And if you're in inside sales, you have all these little short messages, and if you say it badly, you just have to make 100 more calls, to one prospect versus if you change it. For example, and here's the example I'll give. When I initially started out, I would call people and say, hi, this is Jill Konrath. I'm the president of Leapfrog Strategies. We're a sales training company that specializes in prospecting, needs analysis, good questions, blah, 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 blah. The reason I'm calling is that I'd love to find out how you're currently handling your sales training needs and share with you how we might be able to help you. That's a nice message. I'm trying not to be salesy. I'm trying to just let them know what I do and like zero response. So you say, well, don't train people. Okay, so you got all these people using a stupid message that's not working and nobody's getting any better. Then you need to hire more salespeople because nobody's making sales, or they quit because they're not being successful. And now you have new hires who don't know anything, who you have to bring up to speed again. And it's like a death spiral. It just gets harder and harder and harder. So you say, more calls, more calls, more calls. And nobody looks at better calls, better calls.
Fantastic, Jill.
Yeah, that's the truth. But I switched my message and say, like that guy that I was calling, I said, John, I understand that your company is introducing a new product in the upcoming months. I've got some ideas on how to shorten your time to success or shorten your time to profitability on new product launch. Let's set up a time to talk. That's it.
Short.
And it worked.
Short and brief.
Short, but look at not, hi, I'm Jill Konrath, president of Leapfrog Strategies. We specialize in blah, blah, blah. It was, John, Jill Konrath calling. I understand you're launching this new product in the upcoming months. I've gotten some ideas on how to shorten time to profitability on your launch. Let's set up a time to talk. Bingo. Respond.
Yes, because you put them...
It wasn't about me. It's about them.
Perfectly.
Yeah. So you ask about, what do I think about, people who say, we have time to train them. I would say they're crazy and they're making a huge mistake, and it's costing them more than they can realize, not just in lost sales, but they're having to double or triple the amount of effort it takes to get a prospect. And then when they do get a prospect, they lose them much faster because they have an untrained person. And so it's unscalable. They can never get ahead. They're always behind, which means they don't have time to train.
Yes, and it's like a
make any sense,
vicious circle.
Yes.
I love the honesty, Jill, of your answers. Jill, time is our most valuable asset. We've been talking through the last minutes about it.
Yes.
And there's a lot of distractions these days, like messaging, social networks, and so on. And one of the most frequent pains we see here is how to approach your schedule as a salesperson. How can they leverage a productive day or week?
Okay, that's a good question. I think we should start with how most people work when they get to their office, because that's what we're dealing with. The typical salesperson, and we're talking probably, more than 75% of the salespeople, maybe even more, start their day by looking at email. They log on, or they get their cell phone out and they look at email. And so immediately they get sucked into stuff. It's
there
like
it goes.
they get sucked into, and their time just starts disappearing. And every day they get newsletters, and they get that LinkedIn update about, here's the big articles on LinkedIn. And they have, all these things that they're following. And I'll give you an example of me. Again, I'm just as bad as everybody else, but the truth is I'm human, and this is a human issue, not a new hire or a salesperson issue. So, for example, one day I logged on, I got on my email, and I had a LinkedIn thing, and there was an article called 12 Cringe-Inducing Mistakes That Salespeople Make on the Phone. Now, that is a good title. Cringe-inducing mistakes, like, oh my God, how could they do that? So what did I do? I clicked on that link because I needed to know what those cringe-inducing mistakes, that kind, what they were. Absolutely. I don't want to make one. So I'm reading that article, and it's pretty good. About halfway through the article, I see a link to another article, and I go, oh, I better click on here because I referenced some research, So I click on that link and boom, I'm over to another article. And I'm reading that article. And then I think to myself, and this doesn't make sense at all, but I think to myself, I wonder what the weather's going to be like this weekend. Okay. Now, this may be off kilter, but when you're in that kind of distracted mode, those kind of little things pop up and you start acting on them. So I go to my weather app, right? Go to my weather app and I'm looking up the weather for this weekend. And as I look at the weather app, I'm scrolling down to see what it will be like, for the 7-day forecast. And I see something about a sinkhole in Florida that swallowed a bus. So I click on that video because it looks interesting to me, and I watch this bus go falling down through the road into the sinkhole and disappear,
Yes.
And I'm watching that, and then I don't know, right below it, there was this thing where there's the face of two people, one, a woman, and it
I was just asking about if this was the example, the plastic surgeon mistakes.
Yes, the plastic surgery mistakes. Yes. This is how 10 plastic surgery mistakes. And so there I am looking at these plastic surgery mistakes, before and after. And I look up and I go, what in the world just happened to me?
Where's my day?
Where's my day? And this goes on all day long. And so what we're doing is we're living in an environment that is literally our brains are not built for. Our brains are built. We have, this part of our brain called the amygdala, and its whole job is to search the world, to see if there's anything that's new out there. Because in the old days, the way our brain was developed, it was looking for bad guys and dangerous animals and, things that are happening. And whenever it found something that was new, it got a shot of dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone, like, good job, you found something new. Good job, you found something new. But when you get online, what happens is you get sucked in. And you get sucked into an environment and it totally wears out your brain and makes it not good for doing your job. So what do I say? The first thing you should do when you get to your office is not look at your email, because half an hour later you'll be on some other website and wonder how you got there.
Yes.
So don't look at your email, sit down quietly and say to yourself, number one, what are the most important things I need to do today? And in fact, what is the number one thing I better get done today? Because it makes the biggest difference for me in all the world. And to really sit down and to be quiet with oneself and to look at what matters. People who do that really start their day off right. And then to look at your calendar and to say, how do I want to spend my time today to make sure I get this done? And to look at what you have on the schedule and to actually block things on your schedule that you want to get done. So, for example, if you have to write a proposal to somebody, and it needs to get done today. If you just say, I'm going to write a proposal, and by the way, when I get off the phone today, I am writing a proposal. It is on my calendar. It's not just, I'm going to get to it today. It's on my calendar because I know when I hang up from talking to you, I need to write this proposal because it is the most important thing I have to do today. More important than talking to you.
Wow.
No, but it's on my calendar. I didn't just, I'm not just going to get to it. I has to be there. If it's that important. And the other thing too is to just block time to do like similar type activities. Like, you may do research on people and you may spend time doing research on companies or individuals that you'll be calling. And rather than research one company, make one call, send one email, go research another company, and kind of repeat cycle. You don't get in the flow. If you can say, okay, I'm going to do all my research today from 9 to 10, or from 9 to 9:30. And from 9:30 to 10:30, I'm going to be on the phones. Boom. No interruptions. I'm not going to let myself do anything else. I'm just going to be on the phone and make calls. Because once you get into a role, again, you're more productive.
Yes, another thing I read on your content, that study of University of London about multitasking, that constant emailing and text messaging reduces mental capability by an average of 10 points. And for men, crucial, 15 points. And it's like smoking marijuana. I was amazed by this number. I never thought it could be so damaging looking at our emails and doing other stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, it also makes you not be able to, not only just lowers your intellectual capacity, which is not good in sales because we need every ounce of our brain power that we can, but it also, everything takes so much longer. And we, if we're learning something during that time, we don't file it in the right spot. So we can't remember, where it went. It's like, I know I learned that, but I don't know where it was filed in my brain because we were listening to a podcast and doing something else at the same time. I mean, so it's like, we have no idea.
So dozed off.
Yeah. I mean, there's another study too that shows that the average email, or 70-some% of emails, are responded to within 6 seconds, or not responded to. They're addressed. So an email comes into your inbox, and you get a bing or whatever you get, and something shows up there, and you quickly stop whatever you're doing, and look over at what it is. Now, you may or may not choose to respond at that time, but you do look at it. What's in this email? Who's it from? What's in it? And you have to make a decision. But the reality of it is, research again shows our brains aren't constructed to do this. And what happens is it takes 10 to 20 times the length of the interruption to get our heads back in the gear. So say we stop and we look over at an email and we think it's from a prospect or a customer, and we think, I can wait. And it takes 30 seconds. Well, 30 seconds times 10 is 300 seconds divided by 60 seconds per minute. That leaves it takes us 5 minutes to fully recover from that one quick look, 30-second look at an email.
Wow. Amazing. So, Jill, we were talking about multitasking, and today there's a movement around mindfulness, meditation, healthy habits, around the proper food, on sleeping, like everything to have a better life. What are your takes on your habits to be more productive?
Well, let me just say that, there's a movement toward it, but also there's some scientific evidence to support the fact that this is something that is worth doing. Yes. I mean, the reality is, first of all, let's just take a look at sleep. People are sleeping less than ever before. They're, busy. Failure to have, 7.5 hours of sleep, or, and people say, and I said for years, I can get by on 6.5. I can get by. That's different than I am at my peak performance. But I said I can get by for 6.5 hours. But when I did my own analysis, it was 7 hours and 45 minutes, I believe, that it was my optimal, and 7.5 hours is also reasonable for me. But it took me long. When I didn't have the right amount of sleep, it took longer for my brain to kick into gear in the morning. It was much harder to solve difficult problems, customer challenges, sticky, tough sales situations. All that was much harder when I didn't get enough sleep. Yeah, and I couldn't come up with good strategies. I mean, in our job today, it's such a competitive business environment that we really need to be at the top of our game in order to be successful. And let me just say, too, the brain can only focus for so long because the brain is a muscle like our other parts of our body. And if we're sitting in front of the computer all day, it's wearing itself out. And every time it gets worn out, it starts to distract itself. It's like, oh, God, I can't focus, And so that's when you start clicking again,
Yes.
And you find yourself, I wonder what the sports score was, what's going on, the World Cup. I think I'll check over there right now.
Especially here.
Yes. And then boom, you're off there. But that's your brain going, I'm really tired. I can't think anymore. And the best thing you can do is to get up and move around, because moving around actually supplies more oxygen to your brain and makes you think better, as opposed to staring at that little screen. And talking to people elevates your feelings, which makes you think better and perform at more optimal levels. I mean, there's so much going on with this. And I mean, for myself, like I have a hard time meditating, but I know like some people use meditation to quiet their brain, and it's just so much more, they're so much more effective. They don't waste their time on the peripheral stuff that doesn't matter so much. They focus on very clear what needs to get done.
Yeah, I've been meditating for 3 years right now. and it's fantastic. I'm giving some guided meditations for our staff here at MeTime, and it's been great. Every time I finish a class, like one time at like 2 months, I think.
Wow.
We give these classes and we put people to meditate, always voluntary, but people just open their eyes and say, how can you do this? And you're doing it, just meditating, calming your brain. And another thing I'm doing, especially the last 2 months, for those people who have such energy left, find some discipline on a high demand sport. Like, it prevents your brain from overthinking, and put your energy on your legs.
Say that again, what you just said?
Find your discipline, your like sports discipline on a high demand sport. I've been trying triathlon like for the last 2 months, 1 month, and it's been great because as an entrepreneur, I just wake up and sleep thinking about our business, and it drains a lot of energy. So when you put your energy on a high demand sport like this, it prevents your brain from overthinking, you know. I walk into the company and I leave, and that's behind. So it's very, very effective of being very, very effective to test a sport, especially in the morning. I was just like night person. I always exercised at night, but I'm trying like early in the morning. And for those people who have energy to wake up early in the morning, it's great. I'm not sure if you have tried, but it's been rewarding.
I know for me that what I do, and I'm not so challenged as you are. I'm not like such a great athlete as you are. And not everybody who listens is. So maybe I might be more normal. But when I run into a difficult, challenging situation for myself, I go out for a walk. And it's like pulling myself away from the screen and just getting out into a nice day where the wind is blowing and, you know, and just walk. It's wonderful. And I can get more accomplished. I mean, the first half hour of my walk, and I'll take some good walks. The first half hour is just kind of clearing my brain, you know, to just let it go. And then suddenly the answers to some problems, you know, or new ideas, fresh ideas pop into my brain. But it's the getting away from the stupid computer screen that ties our brain down to it and forces us to think small as opposed to think bigger, more creatively. Because when you're meditating or when you're bicycling or when I'm walking, my brain is kind of working in the background and it's kind of looking in different spots to say, well, how could I solve this problem? And it's doing it on its own. I don't have to. And suddenly it literally delivers a complete idea sometimes to me that I go, whoa, where'd that come from?
There's a TED talk around this on how your brain operates, and when you're like thinking about nothing, when it's relaxed, it's solving their own problems and bringing some answers to life. So we'll leave the link here on this podcast, but it's fantastic. I was watching it home. So how your brain works, and it's a fantastic TED talk. It's like 18 minutes long. So very, very good. It's a woman, I forgot her name, but we'll leave the link here below in the description of this episode. But let's say, Jill, that all your good advices so far have been duly noted, and as a salesperson, I want to change. I want to change these whole habits and implement some tips. How do you change old habits to implement new ones? How can we discipline our brain and transition to a better version of ourselves?
Well, I'm not real big on discipline because I find that you're laughing. You're a good disciplined person, I can tell, because you're doing the triathlon, but I'm not real big on discipline. I find that it wears me out to try to discipline myself all the time. The biggest thing I found for myself personally was I had to do some things to control the distractions, first of all, because I could not optimize my performance if I was constantly being distracted. And I actually used some technology to do that. I used, you asked me about, before we talked, we asked me about like some technology that I used, but I used like Rescue Time initially to just see what my online habits were. And it's an app and it's like free, or it's $9.99 US dollars per month to get, to do an analysis of your daily habits online. And my first run through of it was like really embarrassing. I thought I was working all day long, but where I actually was not productive. So I think that it helps us to just have a benchmark to know where we're starting, from. But rather than expend our limited supply of willpower, we need to actually put some parameters up in place to keep us from going off. And I think that's really important to do. I mean, because we keep doing it. Like, first of all, just shutting down notifications, simplest thing in the world, drives salespeople crazy.
Yes.
But shutting down notifications even for an hour a day, at first. So you don't get notified every time that email comes in, or you turn Slack off.
Yes, I was just about to say it.
Just to have some time free where you're not constantly being interrupted, to turn stuff off so your brain doesn't get pulled some other way. I mean, and that kind of stuff is so helpful because it gets you clean, but also like to shut down apps when you're not using them. I mean, just keeping your email program open on the screen is a temptation, and people who have it open are twice as likely to be distracted and go to other websites. They have twice as many other websites open as somebody else, Yeah. So we have to remove the distraction, and the distraction can even be just our cell phone and how it's set up, and it could be our homepage on our computer that we look at with all those folders that are glaring at us going, look at me, look at me, look at me now. It's just like we have to stop that kind of stuff. And that, to me, was the first important step. I had to set it up so that I could not be distracted or had minimal distractions. And so once that's done, I think that the next thing is to start thinking about how you're going to structure your day, and just to start out, one step at a time. And I truly believe people need to experiment and find out what's good for them. But to me, to sit down and say, what's most important? Jill, what's most important? If I could start my day with that question, what's most important? Bingo, I'm off to a good start, right?
Yeah, right.
And then block the time. And there's so many things you can do after that, but I just think you have to build on things. And again, because I'm not good at discipline, what I found that I had to do in order to really get good is I actually had to create a persona and become a persona. That sounds really silly, but there's research to support that assuming a persona, you become the persona, you start becoming the persona within a couple of weeks. I became Jill, the time master, and I'd walk into my office. I go, okay, Jill, you're the time master today. What do you need to do? And when I became the persona, I stopped fighting my habits and became a different person. And I actually created new habits of my own without the fight of having to battle the old habits, which I thought was fascinating, that kind of thing could work. But I discovered it by accident and then found all the research that supported that afterwards. But for anybody who's struggling with willpower, I strongly suggest, creating an avatar of your own and become the avatar. And I'm going to be the time master today. You don't have to be the time master every day, but just, you can be the time master for the morning.
So there's a goal.
You get a lot done.
Yeah, I love this advice. I heard you on another video. I was doing my homework on you. So you said this is like a distraction management and not a time management. I think this is key.
Right.
If you don't have that much discipline, this can be key. So looking at all the distractions, not only the time. We have all these services to bring you notifications. So if we can shut some of them off, so it can be a more productive day. Mm-hmm. So Jill,
I agree. Yes.
To close our episode, you started to answer my last question that was about technologies. You mentioned rescue time. Are there any other technologies we can use as salespeople to have a more productive day?
Oh, I think there's a lot of technologies and we can go down. It depends on what people are selling. I mean, I work out of home office, which actually blocks me from going on certain websites at certain times. I mean, literally I have to set it up and I'll say, for the next 2 hours, I don't want to be able to go on LinkedIn, or Facebook or any of my highly distractible websites. And I set it up and it just prevents me from going there. It's like, okay, got to get your work done, Jill. I mean, I do like LinkedIn. I mean, I think that's a great resource and people who aren't using it are making a mistake. I love technologies that show you trigger events or help you find the right person to contact within a company. That's, to me, that's a lifesaver. But a trigger event is something that I've written 4 books on sales, and it's, I think, the only thing that's been in all 4 books, the only thing. And a trigger event is something that happens in a company that loosens the grip of the status quo. Like there's a law change, or there's a new leadership team, or they have a new strategic initiative. I mean, following up on those and using technology to be aware of certain things that are happening in companies is crucial. Because again, the research out of CEB shows that top salespeople are going after companies that are already experiencing some change that can impact the decision.
Yes.
So that's the kind of stuff that I think that there's so many things, but also let me go back to exactly where we started. Technology isn't the answer if you don't get good at selling. Technology enables good selling, but we have to go back to learning how to, to what matters and having the right conversations with people in the right manner. I mean, again, because we're talking inside salespeople, if your message sucks, you're not going to get an appointment. You're not going to have a meeting. So why not focus on having a better message? Or if your demo is bad, well, nobody's going to buy from you. So rather than just giving more demos, why don't we give better demos? Things like that.
Yeah, it all ended where it started. Jill, I loved our episode. I hope our audience can catch up all these good advices you gave. And I want to thank you for spending these minutes with us. And if you want to say bye to our audience, please feel free.
So, goodbye, everybody, and thanks so much for listening. I have had fun talking to Diego, and this is a good podcast. You're a good interviewer.
Thanks a lot. Such a pleasure to have you here with us. So, bye, guys. See you next episode.